Yellowjackets has had one of the most successful first seasons of any show in the past decade, and it's due to its incredibly gripping and raw story, its dynamic characters, and its unique way of telling its incredible story that no other show has done. If you've yet to tune into this hit show, this video may give you the boost you need to go binge it. So sit back, relax, and get ready to be educated on everything Yellowjackets. First up, what is the show about? If you were to read the first few sentences of Yellowjackets' description, you might end up accidentally falling asleep, as it sounds super boring. But to be fair, I think they do this so they don't give anything away. But I don't want to make a boring video, so I'm going to give you my own description. And if you don't want to jump out of your seat to go give this show a try, then you might want to jump out of your seat and go see a doctor, because something is clearly wrong with you. But anyways, let's get into it. The show follows a group of young teenagers going across the United States from New Jersey to Seattle to participate in a soccer tournament. However, on the way there, their plane crashes in the Canadian wilderness, leaving only a few teens alive. Before you ask, why don't they just use their cell phones and call for help? Well, it's because they can't, because the show takes place in 1996. Well, at least part of it does, but I'll get to that later. The show spends most of its time depicting the teens' brutal struggle to survive with the little materials they've had, and the very daunting realization that these woods will be their final resting place. Along with the constant fear of death, the group has to worry about their mental state as well as the mental state of those around them to ensure that they don't lose their grip on reality. Of course, like any other good show, there are a ton of incredibly intertwined story arcs that keep you hanging on for every second to see what happens, and trust me, the show rewards the viewers on most of them, with some stories being held off for a later point in the show. The other half of the show is vastly different, as it depicts the survivors of the crash living their normal lives, 25 years later in the year 2021. While it is obviously less brutal, I would argue that the drama and the tension are much higher in these scenes, as the characters obviously know way more than the viewers do. These characters live through what they're watching bit by bit, and as we are slowly learning what has happened to them, we see how hard it is for them to live their everyday lives without being haunted by their past. It is so deliciously intriguing, as every scene either in 1996 or in 2021 has something to love about it, and for vastly different reasons. It is one of the best shows currently on TV right now, and it is a shame that you haven't started watching it yet. Why start now if you haven't started yet? Well, to be honest with all of you, I really only have like 3 reasons as to why you should start this show if you haven't already, so I won't waste your time and I'll just get right into them. For starters, the show has already been confirmed for a second season, so if you love season 2 and you get really attached to a few storylines that you know will continue on past the end of the season, you're guaranteed that they will be addressed with more Yellowjackets content later in 2022. In addition to that, season 2 got the green light by Showtime in mid-December of 2021, and the first episode aired on November 14th, 2021. That means it literally took a month for the studio to see the gold they had on their hands and immediately locked it up for another season, which when you think about it is pretty insane. The viewer numbers were staggering, and that was due to the amazing quality of the show, which is obviously another reason to get into the show. I mean, even if season 2 had not been confirmed yet, or even if we knew that there was never going to be a second season, I would still recommend the show to everyone. Why? Because the show is 10 episodes of quite possibly the best acting I've ever seen. But of course, because I am lazy and don't know how to structure a video, I will get into that a bit later. But thirdly, how many shows lately have told a story in this way, where part of the story takes place in the past and the other takes place in the future? The only show that I can think of at the top of my head is CW's Arrow, which saw the protagonist Oliver Queen spend half the episode running around Star City as a bow and arrow wielding vigilante, and the other half of the show showing us his brutal past, in which he was stranded all alone on an island, which has driven him to return home and become this faceless hero. It is a bold way of telling a story, and much like Arrow, Yellowjackets is taking this form of storytelling and knocking it out of the park. This show should get the edge over so many other shows you have been meaning to watch, because there is simply nothing like this on the market right now. And much like the premise and the storytelling, there is simply no cast quite like this one either. Next, the cast makes the show. Obviously, I cannot say enough good things about the story itself and the way the story is told, but the real stars of this show are the cast. The cast makes this show, and while other shows obviously have stacked cast as well, this one is different. For starters, 2 actors play the same character just in different time periods, which means that these actors have to work even harder than normal actors do, because they have to work simultaneously to create a character that lines up with the alternate version of their character. The characters in 1996, while being the same person as the ones in 2021, are vastly different because one version has gone through the trauma, while the other is currently going through it. One version can't even imagine the horrors they are about to endure, while the other can't seem to forget the horrors they endured in the woods in the 90s. While you would think that the subtleties that one version of the character does wouldn't affect or even apply to the other version, they find a way to perfectly line it up, or even mature in a weird way. Something the characters does in 1996 either dies in the woods or amplifies to help them survive the woods and then sticks with them forever, all the way until 2021, and the viewer can clearly see it. According to an interview with one of the main cast members, each duo of actors that were cast to the same character sat down with the other actor and hashed out their thoughts for the character according to the script, and they all had the goal of ensuring that the actors worked together to get their character to a place that they both wanted to be. They didn't want the actors to have different ideas on where the character should go, but rather, they wanted perfect synchronization between the character in 1996 and the character in 2021. And if you're sitting there thinking that there is no way that the little things are noticed and that the the actors don't have a shared vision, you are absolutely wrong. The actors have done an amazing job of making the most realistic version of the characters' journey from plane crash to their current lives, and it adds to the realistic nature of the show. Now, the very few cons. I do feel like it's fair to let the potential new bingers of the show on the very few but technically blatant flaws in this show. For starters, the show does give away the fact that some of the characters survive the plane crash and some clearly do not, as the number of people we see in 2021 does not even remotely line up with the characters that we see survive the plane crash in 1996. Sure, these characters could just be lost, or they refuse to hang out with the people they spent the worst time of their lives with, but it does make it very obvious that some characters clearly do survive, so putting them in any life-threatening situation sort of robs the show of tension in the scenes in 1996. Also, the show does not hold back when it comes to the gore and brutality. While that is a bonus for some people, it'll definitely be a turnoff for others, and I feel like there are some scenes in which they could have gotten away with implied violence instead of making us watch it, but that is their choice. While the show doesn't necessarily suffer for this choice, it will be a con to some viewers, but at the same time, this is a show about a plane crash and teens living in the woods. So what did you expect? But honestly, these are the very few cons of the show that I can think of. So what are you waiting for? Go and watch Yellowjackets and see what all the hype is about for yourself.